Episode 134, Dennis Kucinich. Dennis Kucinich is a public official. He's been a mayor, state senator, Congress member, and candidate for president of the United States. He is, in my opinion, one of the few out there who has genuinely tried to use public office, as corrupt as it is, for good. We talk about his history, the current state of affairs, and even a few points of disagreement. Please welcome to the show, Dennis Kucinich. What's up, everybody? Friendly reminder that Left It Wall is out now, and you can catch it on a bunch of platforms. It's on Apple TV, it's on YouTube Movies, it's on Google Play, it's on Xbox, it's on Cable On Demand, it's on Amazon. I recommend watching it on Tubi, because on Tubi, it is free. So check it out. I recommend Tubi, but watch it on whatever platform you like. All right, Left It Wall, fun anti-capitalist comedy about family. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Also, some tour dates. I got them April 18th. That's a virtual show, so anyone can attend. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. You can get information on my website, ronplacone.com, because that is a virtual show that's also free, and I'll be doing Anti-Fascist Pasta Night. It's the only virtual show of Anti-Fascist Pasta Night. May 16th, Los Angeles, California. June 5th, New York City. And August, I'll be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival in Edinburgh, Scotland. Tickets and all information at ronplacone.com. All right, enjoy today's episode. Dennis Kucinich, how are you? Good to see you again.
Ron, good to join you today. Important time to have this conversation.
No kidding. Yeah, what a wild time. But these are one and done interviews, so I do like to kind of start at the beginning. Even though I know a lot about your history, I kind of want to unpack some of it. So give me the Dennis Kucinich origin story.
Well, I've served at many different levels of government. I started off as a city councilman. I went from there to clerk of the Cleveland Municipal Courts. And I was elected mayor, the youngest mayor in America years ago. And after a tumultuous term in which I took on a utility monopoly, the banks, and the mob, I was able to save the city's electric system from a takeover by the utility monopoly. Years later, I went to the state Senate. After that, to the U.S. House of Representatives, where I served 16 years, ran twice for the Democratic nomination. And I have spent most of my time in Congress trying to stop this country from entering into wars that were based on lies, which is all of them. And I led the effort to stop the war against Serbia, to get out of Afghanistan, to not go into Iraq, to try to get out of Iraq, to not go to war against Iran, to not go to war against Libya, and not go to war against Syria, and not permit attacks on Lebanon, and on and on. And did I go to Congress for that reason? I went there for healthcare for all, for jobs for all, for retirement security, for education for all, for pre-kindergarten for children so that working parents would get a break. And yet, when I got there, what I found, Ron, was a country that was forever on the warpath, that took increasing amounts of the resources of the country to feed into a military-industrial complex on behalf of corrupt special interests.
Have you become soured at all towards electoral politics with, the peeks under the hood that you've had?
Not a chance. I'm wise about it, certainly.
Sure.
I've had about, 43, 44 elections, counting primaries and generals and some special issues. And I've won about 3/4 of the elections I've been in, which, in most major leagues would put you near the top. But in politics, you lose an election, you're out. And I lost when I was redistricted in 2012 with with the behind the scenes efforts made of some of the very interest groups that I was fighting in Congress. And I'm not complaining that's the way the system works. But, today I read a column on Substack. I speak at to groups around the country, and I'm still very active. I haven't slowed down a second. And what I'm finding is that America at this very moment is in what might be the most dangerous moment of its history, where there is a chance that the republic, as was constituted 250 years ago, will disintegrate. And it really depends on not just your viewers, but people everywhere who have a concern about a government that's out of control, government that's held by special interests, government that is not responsive to the practical interest of people. And so I'm still at it. I have not soured on anything. Hope springs eternal. and one must have a cheerful relentlessness daily in order to advance and take part in efforts to create the world that we envision instead of the world that at the moment we're stuck with.
So I wanted to highlight a few things that you talked about, and so I'll kind of start with the beginning. You mentioned the electrical grid when you were mayor of Cleveland, which is a story, of course, I'm familiar with, having followed you for many, many years now. I was curious, as time has evolved, because I know it was not popular in the moment. As time has evolved, has that whole occurrence, is that seen more fondly in the eyes of Cleveland, just towards you and in general?
Well, of course, because look, after that happened when I was mayor, I was out of office for a while, and people didn't understand that a bank, Cleveland Trust, forced the city into default because I wouldn't sell the electric system to their utility partner. Mm-hmm. And when I refused to sell, or was involved in trying to block the sale, there were 3 assassination attempts. I mean, I'm lucky to be here. I'm grateful for every day. But the people of Cleveland brought me back. They sent me to the state Senate. They sent me to the United States Congress. And I've always been privileged to serve them. But when you take on these interest groups, as I did, and I wrote a book about it called The Division of Light and Power. And you can still get it as, most books through Amazon.
Yeah. And I read it, but it's been a couple years, so I'm not.
But, the story is basically that of a young mayor who takes on the establishment of his town and finds out that the degree of behind-the-scenes effort to defeat the public interest involving not just the big banks and a utility, but the media in Cleveland, the newspapers, the radio and TV stations, all of whom were getting ad money from both the bank and the utility. And bottom line, we saved the electric system. It still exists today. When I saved it, it was providing electricity to people of Cleveland about 20 to 25% cheaper. What people pay for electricity becomes an increasingly important matter in our lives. Access to affordable energy is a big deal. And then I was trying to stop a monopoly from taking over the city's electric system. So that story, by the way, has been characterized as one of the most important cautionary tales in U.S. Political history, because it shows what happens when one person is ready to take on these interest groups. They raised quite a bit of money to get me out of office, of course, but the ground that I stood on ended up being very firm. We saved an electric system, and years later, people understood why I did what I did, and turning down the bank's offer to take the city's electric system off my hands and be able then, the banks would then renew the city's credit on loans that I hadn't even taken out. I mean, I faced a racket. So inevitably, Ron, what happens in public life, the question that you have to answer every day is, who am I? Who do I represent? Why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? And once you sell your soul to an interest group in order to ingratiate them, and so they'll help you get reelected or move on and up, forget about it. Do another line of work. Protect a shred of your dignity. So I still live in Cleveland. I still live in the same house that I've been in for, 55 years. And there is not a shred of regret in taking a stand, because if I hadn't taken that stand, not only would the city not have its electric system today, but people would be paying a hell of a lot more for electricity. And those are things that count. Of course, there's many other issues going on and still going on in Cleveland. But so I represented this area in council as clerk of courts, as mayor, as state senator, as U.S. rep, and as a presidential candidate. And I feel very grateful to have that opportunity, because I've always served with a sense of purpose. I still have that sense of purpose. That song, "The Impossible Dream," will describe about me. You have to be willing to fight to your last, so that honor and justice may live.
Would you ever consider like a local office again? Like, is that something that you could see yourself going back to?
There's a lot of factors involved in that. I mean, if I run again, and I'm not saying I will, but if I were to run again, I'd run for national office. I'm not, and I'd run nationally. I'm not. I certainly appreciate those who serve at a local level. Cleveland, unfortunately, has a very weak government, which concedes taxpayer resources to interest groups too easily. That's part of life. I mean, you serve, and then people come after you, and you can't account for anything they might do. But as far as myself, look, I'm still in the public sphere. I still am very concerned about what's happening in the world and in our nation. I travel a lot. I speak to people all over this country and all over the world on a regular basis. I think I have a pretty firm grasp of where America is at the moment. And, I keep the option open of serving again in elective office. But to me, that's secondary right now to speaking out about the danger that America is entering into in this illegal war against, an unauthorized war against Iran. We are moving into a period where we could collapse all of our alliances, where we could spend great treasure and much blood of our brave men and women who serve, and where we could wreck our economy and a good part of the world's economy, where we could ignite a broader war. This is, Ron, in my entire life, I have never seen a time that was more fraught with danger for our country and for the world than the time that we're in right now.
As someone who remembers you being among the only people, and I know there were others too, but you were, among a few people and one of the most vocal, who was, calling for the impeachment of George W. Bush over Iraq. Read those articles on C-SPAN. I watched the whole thing, and I'm not trying to be in any way like discouraging or blackpilled or whatever else, but is there kind of, do you have those moments where you just kind of feel like, oh, here we go again? And how do you get through those moments and find your hope?
For some reason, I was not born with the discouragement gene. I, you know, I just keep going ahead. I just keep moving along, and as I said, with a cheerful relentlessness. Because if you want to be in public service, whether it's as an elected official or as somebody who's involved in matters affecting your country and the world, you have to be aware of the human condition. You have to be aware of the both the complexities and the simplicities of life. And you can't go down in discouragement for a moment if people don't appreciate you, or if they don't, like what you're doing at the moment. They may agree with you today, disagree with you tomorrow, disagree with you today, agree with you tomorrow. What's your polar star? Is it truth? Is it justice? Is it public service? Is it a better world? Is it a world without war? And these are things that are always in consideration. So, anyone who wants to serve has to, and this is always true. It's not just true for me. Anyone who wants to serve has to be ready to, in the words of Shakespeare, suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And I've been through that. I understand it. I can't be broken. I'm still a wild horse.
How would you say just the left-wing movement in the United States, or just the evolution of progressive ideas in the United States, how do you feel like that has evolved, and particularly from 2008 until now? And do you think we're in a better place or not?
I don't think the left-right describes where we are anymore.
Okay.
I don't think liberal conservatives describes who we are. Liberal or conservative describes who we are. I think we're in a place where it's a question of one's humanity. I mean, how can someone stand by and give a political answer to the genocide that's occurring in Gaza, and for that matter, in the West Bank right now? How can someone stand by and see what's happened in Syria, what's happening in Lebanon, what's happened in Yemen, in Iraq, in Iran, all with our U.S. tax dollars in play, killing innocent people, and try to reduce this to a political question? See, what happens is when someone's partisan position stops them from being able to go deeper into the essential moral questions regarding life and death, that means we've been paying too much attention to partisanship. And it means that we have indulged in polarized thinking of us versus them, wherever they are, which is a precursor to war and a precursor to the destruction of our country and the world. So we really must start thinking in terms of the unity of all people. I've traveled the world. People are like the world over. They may have different religion, different color, different languages, but under it all, people are alike. They have the same practical aspirations for safe communities, for the safety of their loved ones, their family members, for access to economic resources, to be able to buy the food, the clothing their family needs, to be able to have a decent life of some kind, with access to medical care, with being able to educate their children, having in their senior years an opportunity to live in dignity. These are common aspirations of human beings all over the globe. And yet when politics enters in, and that politics becomes murderous and it becomes partisan, we end up alienating ourselves from our deeper humanity, from what the poet called those primal human instincts. And once that happens, there is what another poet called that turning in the widening gyre, where of discontinuity, of incoherence, of chaos, which causes people to turn on each other. I have also want to recognize that in the past decade, we have seen that family member turning against family member for political reasons. Why should that happen? And yet that kind of reflects a leadership that moves by polarization, instead of trying to bring people together, instead of recognizing that, whatever our nationality, our country of origin, our language, our religion, we're all brothers and sisters. We're all made of the same stuff. I mean, it's scientifically proven by the human genome theory. We're 99.9% all made of the same stuff. When our family members meet casualty, they're bleeding the same blood that a Gazan child bleeds when he's shot in the head by an IDF soldier. I mean, it's when we start to think that other people are so different, the moment we have that thought, there's a problem.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I think one of the problems we see today, though, is, it's one thing like, oh, we have political differences. Yeah, that's fine. But when the political difference is, hey, we think this group of people doesn't deserve to exist, that goes into something else. And that goes into a very dangerous territory. So how do we turn that tide?
Well, it has to start with one's own spiritual reflection. Every person, every human being has a right to exist,
mm-hmm.
and that's codified in laws since the beginning of the first laws that were put down, and thou shalt not kill, okay, and before that. So there's legal imperatives towards life. There's spiritual imperatives towards life, and it starts with oneself. With one person having enough respect and love for oneself to understand that in each of us represents part of all of us, that as any one of us chooses, so chooses the world. There is this connection that we all have. And the minute that we think another person doesn't deserve to live, it actually reflects on our own selves. It's, in a way, it's saying that part of us is not just lacking, but maybe feeling that we don't deserve to live either. And there is a sense when we become alienated, when we separate ourselves from others, and we start to evoke others as an outgroup. Okay, when that happens, then we are locked in to trouble. Hold on one second. I got a dog.
Your dog okay?
For my attention.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So, I would argue that the murder impulse is a suicidal impulse, ultimately. And you kill one person, you kill the world. And I think we're here to heal the world. It's called Tikkun Olam in the Hebrew language, and it's a common spiritual principle that is shared by all the great religions about trying to bring a measure of light and love to situations that may bring darkness otherwise. So, I mean, inevitably, I see my life and the potential of other lives as being a spiritual journey. We're trying to always navigate the territories every day of whether of the choices that we make every day. In every moment, we're making a choice about our spiritual destiny. I've always felt that way in my years of involvement in public life. Every moment, whether anybody's watching or not, you're making a choice.
So, speaking of healing the world, I know that you've done a lot of work in more recent years on climate change. Let's talk about that issue for a bit. I mean, where do you feel like we're at this point in time? How do we start turning things around? I know that's a heavy question, but take it any direction you want.
Well, you start off with the soil itself, with the resonance between the soil microbiome and its health and our own microbiome as human beings and our health. The greater application of poisons like Bayer Monsanto's glyphosate helps to destroy the soil microbiome. And then when people consume plants that are sprayed with this, it adversely affects the human microbiome. We've not been protective of the land. Our methods of farming have become corporate and have not really respected the things that would help make the land more fertile. Our agriculture has turned away from organic, even though people would like to see more organic products. We need more regenerative agriculture that doesn't waste things, doesn't rely on chemicals. So we need to protect the land. We need to protect the water. We know that our water supplies are increasingly being poisoned with various phthalates, plastics, neurotoxic metals. And because of things like slant drilling for the purpose of fracking, our air continues to be polluted. And this recent administration has given basically a license to polluters to continue to put sulfur dioxide into the air and a whole range of chemicals. The philosopher Thomas Berry said that the great work of our life is to reconcile ourselves with the natural world. And that natural world is the predicate of our existence. And yet we've seen over and over again destruction of the land, of the air, of the water. And it's put us in a position where we're less healthy as a species, and we are, and we have less control of our politics as a result, as we become less healthy. So, with the environment, we have Earth Day coming up again, and this idea that climate change is not real relies upon, episodic fluctuations in temperatures, but you only have to look at the ice masses to understand that they're melting and that sea levels are rising. When I first went to Congress in 1997, one of the first things I was privy to was what was then a very insider report that said that sea levels would be rising on the East Coast as a result of changes in climate. We are fouling, as human beings, we are fouling our own nest and ruining the preconditions for the next generation. We have a moral obligation to be good stewards, faithful stewards of the land and of the water and of the air, not just for ourselves, but for 7 generations ahead. We failed, but there's still the hope that a human, earth-centered consciousness will arise that will give us an opportunity to reconnect with that natural world and show us how critical it is that we do so. And I want to add this. Think of the environmental destruction that war creates. It's catastrophic. Dropping bombs filled with every kind of chemical, including TNT, phosphorus, pummeling, not just, killing people and murdering the land as well. In some cases, deliberately spraying toxins upon the land, as is happening in the Bacaw Valley, so that people can't grow food there and can't live there. These are crimes against humanity for sure. And so how do we stop it? Well, there has to be a conscious awakening of the American people, and a understanding that that peace is a precondition for our continued existence, that protection of the air, the water, and the land are preconditions, that law, our Constitution, respect for it, defense of it, abiding by international law is essential for America, not just the rest of the world, America and the rest of the world. We must come to that point where, as Americans, we recognize our common humanity with people all over the world, and at that moment, war will be rejected. There should never be war. War should not be permitted. It is a grave offense against who we are as human beings. To think that in 2026, we're still going back to this us versus them, and somehow America has a right to dominate the world, that is such a crock. It needs to be dismissed. We need to take back these 800 military bases around the world where we pretend that we can use them to dominate. How about coming home? Take care of things at home, America. And when we do, we have the resource. I want to add this, Ron. Right now, the military consumes about over 50% of our discretionary spending. In the next budget, the president has asked for $1.5 trillion a year just for the military. More wars, right? Well, that'll consume 80% of our discretionary spending. We become just a nation on the war path, and there's no path towards home, believe me. And ultimately, it's a scam. This is a grift. I mean, look at the other, recently we saw this story about before the president announced that there was a possibility of peace talks. That wasn't true, but he announced it. But just before that, there were great bets placed on Wall Street and in oil markets, which caused the price of oil to drop, the markets to go up, and some people somewhere made hundreds of millions and maybe billions of dollars on trades because they had inside information. War's a grift. We have an administration that's interested in real estate. They're looking at developing Gaza. What? On what? On the bones of dead Palestinians? What? I mean, you think about how grotesque this is. This is like something out of a horror picture, and yet it's real, and yet it's our tax dollars that are doing it. We have to decide as a country to just stop this, period. Stop the wars, stop the spending for wars, we could have healthcare for all, we could have education for all, we could have a decent retirement security for everyone, or we can have war. Make your choice. I know what I'd choose.
So on that note, you've brought up Gaza several times. And I say this as somebody who has been a fan of yours for about 20 years. One of the things, as of recent, that I did strongly disagree with and was discouraged to see was your affiliation with RFK. And I wondered if you could speak to that. Where is that currently? I'll put my cards on the table. I consider him among the most dangerous people in American politics.
Well, let me give you some background.
Sure.
I have known him for now about 35 years at least. And I met him through my friendship with his mother, Ethel Kennedy. And I met a number of other people in the Kennedy family. And Bobby and I became friends. We worked together on various environmental issues over the years. And as a result of that, he called me up, and myself and my wife, and said, he wanted to talk to us. And he told us that he wanted to run for president. And he's a friend of mine. So I came to Cleveland and we talked about it. And I'll share something with you, Ron. I was actually thinking myself of getting in the race that year. But, when he came in, I figured, well, maybe I step back and help Bobby. And he ran.
You just gave me another reason to not like the guy, Dennis.
Okay, keep going. So we launched the campaign, as Kennedy Democrats, which harkened back to his uncle, John F. Kennedy, his dad, Robert F. Kennedy, Sr. And it was a campaign that was about peace as well as healthcare. But unfortunately, October 7th happened, and we're still friends, but we parted ways, and I decided that I had to leave the campaign on October 7th, 2023. One of the challenges in life is to maintain friendships, even though you might have a difference of opinion. Mm-hmm. And I frankly think that's probably the only way you get peace in the world, to have friendships, but differences of opinion, and try to find a way to navigate it. And that's what I do. But he's still my friend. And, it's, not a question of whether I agree with anything from A to Z, but, we've worked together on a lot of things. And then I made a decision that I wasn't going to work on this specific election pursuit that he was involved in. I wish him well, and I hope that the decisions that he makes are in the interests of the American people. I'm sure that he thinks they are.
But, do you think they are?
Well, those things are always subject to debate. I mean, let me just share something with you. I never told anybody not to be vaccinated, and I don't think he did either, for that matter. But I wasn't vaccinated. I had my own reasons. I think people ought to rely on their own doctor's advice, doctors who know what their health situation is. My doctor, based on my own unique health situation, said, it might be risky if you get vaccinated.
You're referring strictly to the COVID vaccine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I entered this debate. But I did. If you go to the internet, I think it was in 1999, and you type in Kucinich and autism. I was in Congress, and I had parents come to me who told me their kids were totally okay until they were vaccinated, and then they developed autism. And I started raising questions about mercury-related compounds. I raised them with a Republican from Indiana by the name of Dan Burton. Now, look, I never tell anyone not to get vaccinated. That's their choice. But, I do say that there's plenty of evidence that the public should be aware of. I mean, if I remember correctly, Ron, in my time in Congress, the vaccine makers basically received a congressional action which held them harmless from lawsuits from anybody who was injured as a result. And I think I remember that. And I know that's been at the center of controversies involving Kennedy. But I'm not dogmatic on this, and I don't know that he is.
I would argue that he is, but
I respect that. Look, there are many people who feel that he is, and this isn't said to discount the concerns that are out there, because people have a right to be concerned. Ultimately, I think our health, the health of any of us, is dependent on our own decisions, on what we eat, on what we drink, on the environment that we live in. And ultimately, we have to take that responsibility, but we depend on guidance from government officials, and we hope that guidance is going to work out for us. I mean, we were guided years ago against public objections to put fluoride in the water. Now, anybody who raised that question years ago was seen as a kook. But, one of the things that is being investigated, and has been investigated very carefully, is that fluoride compound, aluminum fluoride, is viewed as a neurotoxin, and it could adversely affect people. So, do I use fluoride toothpaste? I've always tried not to. Do I pay attention to the environmental contaminants? Yes. Did I ever smoke? No. But did I watch the warnings, even before congressional hearings led by Henry Waxman, that the cigarette companies were hiding information about cigarettes causing cancer? I paid attention to that. Especially, I had a mother who died from emphysema, and she smoked from the time she was 14. These are all questions that, part of being who we are, we have a right to ask. We may never make a decision one way or another, but we also have a right to decide what we want to do for ourselves. There's still people who smoke.
Sure.
There's still people who drink, despite, various labels that a certain amount of consumption can be counterproductive or counteractive to one's health. It still goes down to individual choice.
Sure, I understand that to some extent. One thing I will say in response to that, the child whose parents chose not to vaccinate them at all, and then they get measles because measles is at a 30-year high in the United States, they didn't have a choice. So, do you have some concerns with the way things are going? And RFK is at the helm of a lot of that.
Well, here's the thing. I think there's tension inside the CDC over the views coming down from the top. There's an ongoing discussion. I'm not up to date on where that is right now, but I will tell you this. Parents always are making decisions about what's right for their children. And it is, they make dozens of decisions every day. And when it comes to health, there's a deeper question here. Some religions don't believe in blood transfusions, okay? These are tough questions. And one needs to have a kind of Solomon-like wisdom to say, well, this is the way it should be, or that's the way it should be. But it's part of the debate that's ongoing. I would not tell anybody in my family not to be vaccinated. I wouldn't go out. I don't proselytize on this, by the way, because to me, it's not responsible to do that. One has to recognize that at some level, each person has an inner wisdom that guides them for the choices they make every minute, every day of their lives. And we just pray that people make choices that will support themselves and their family members. People don't always do that. I mean, just on the other side of the coin, I have talked to people, adults, who felt they had to take the COVID vaccine and experienced after that myocarditis. Serious cases, serious. And, I chose not to for my own reason and advice of a doctor, but other people chose to do it. Mm-hmm. I understand why they chose to do it. I didn't tell them don't do it. But there are consequences if you do it, and there might be consequences if you don't.
Mm-hmm. Right, because just to be fair, long COVID causes myocarditis too, and at a much, very extensively too.
No, I understand that. I'm just pointing out that that it's possible for people to make decisions that work out, and sometimes they don't work out. I'm always cautious about trying to insist to people what choices they ought to make when it comes to their health. I'll give you an example. I had, as a young person, a case of Crohn's disease that almost killed me. I was 21 years old in a hospital bed at St. Alexis Hospital in Cleveland, and I was in very critical condition. I had my weight was down to below 80 pounds, and I was they got me ready just enough so I could have surgery and have half of my colon and half of my small intestines, a good part of my small intestines removed. Years later, after struggling with Crohn's, I discovered a vegan diet 31 years ago. And once I became a vegan, I noticed the Crohn's symptoms started to disappear. They didn't go away entirely. But then I added Chinese medicine. I don't have Crohn's anymore. Now, this was my choice and my journey. And a journey towards health is inevitably an individual journey. Hundreds of millions of people, and people are in position of responsibility, they have to also choose wisely about their recommendations. But still, nobody told me I had to do this. What they told me is to take these pills I threw them all out after I changed my diet and started using Chinese medicine, with the exception of maybe 2 out of 8. But, you know, this issue of health ends up being deeply personal, but certainly people are in positions of responsibility, have obligations to do the best they can to get the best information they can to the public. And, and I sometimes, you hope they always make the right choices. I can't, maybe the jury's still out on some of those.
So, well, I appreciate your nuance in this discussion. I want to end it on kind of a more thematic note. You have definitely played the long game electorally, big time. Well, I just was curious, as you see someone, like a Zohra Mamdani winning in New York, are you encouraged for the future of electoral politics? And what is your message to a new generation of potential candidates and potential office holders who want to, if I had to just sum up, my take on your work in general is you are someone who has tried to use the office despite all of its corruption. And we all know there's a lot of it. You are among, in my opinion, the few that has tried to use the office for good. So, what is your message to future office holders who will hopefully also have that same pursuit?
First of all, Ron, thank you for saying that, and thank you for inviting me on your show. This discussion that we've had has been very important, and it's been based on a collegial approach. We have some disagreements, but
sure.
We can recognize those and just try to keep moving ahead.
Is your dog okay? I'm a little worried.
Yeah, well, this is a house they can run.
Oh, okay.
These are the dogs of peace, by the way.
Awesome. I got some cats of peace. They're sleeping though.
So anyhow, if the biggest lesson that I can give to the best advice I could give to somebody who's starting in politics: don't sell out. Never sell out. Protect your soul. Don't think that you have to go to a certain group to get permission to run. You don't. Don't think that a party is the path necessarily to political office. Not necessarily. I think that America is moving away from parties, and after, the Democrats will take back the House, they could take the Senate, but I don't know that it'll make a difference, frankly. And I think that by 2028, people may be ready for more independence. So I think that, our gift as Americans, the gift of freedom, allows us to be independent thinkers, and that partisan thinking locks us into limitations. And so I'm in speaking to younger Americans, I would say, you step forward. At local levels. I started at a local level. And it was very important because I learned by close contact with people the real day-to-day concerns that people have. It's very, very grounding experience. People go to Congress or the Senate right away. I think there's a price that you pay, which is not really being closely connected, and local politics, which I encourage young people to go into, is really the vehicle by which you really understand the practical aspirations of people. So start locally, don't sell out, and don't worry about losing. Winning and losing are opposite sides of the same coin. Are you committed to public service? Do you care about people? Do you want to make this a better world? And if you do, then hang in there. Don't worry about whether you win or, whether you lose an election. And if you happen to win, be humble about it, because it's really important not to believe that you know more than anyone, that you're smarter than anyone, that you're more important than anyone. You're just another person representing other people. And hopefully you'll do it in a way that it has honor and dignity. And I'll stress, the minute that somebody, offers you help, if you do A, B, or C, go the other way. If I'm happy about one thing throughout my political career, it's that I never, ever, ever had to had a vote that was a result of something that somebody gave me or did for me or would do for me later on. I can't even think like that. I mean, it's given me freedom. Now I'm free to make mistakes, but I'm free to do the right thing too. And that's for young people. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just get in there every day and make an effort in your own community. And as you do that, you'll find a path towards service at higher and higher levels.
Dennis, thanks so much for doing this, and thanks for everything you do.
Ron, I'm very grateful to be on with you, and let's have this discussion again, okay?
That was Dennis Kucinich. Be sure to, you can look him up, find all of his stuff. He certainly does not need a plug from me, but that was a wonderful conversation, and I got a very nice note from Dennis afterwards, which I appreciate a lot. I mean, I've been following the guy for 20 years. I was very inspired by him in 2008. I remember him on that debate stage. Anyway, these kind of conversations are important, even though we do have a few points of disagreement. Music for the 1000 podcast is provided by Andrew Saxon. Now be sure to check out his podcast, the Baywatching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a 5-star review. Spread the word. Make sure you're subscribed, especially if you get this show on YouTube. You know the drill over there. And if you want to support the show on the sustainability end, patreon.com/Ron Flacone. For a Get What You Can level, you get insider information into films and events. You get, we do a Zoom hangout once a month, and you get the 1,000 episodes before they're released to the public. And that's all for a Get What You Can level. Even $1 a month goes a long way. All right, 134. I don't really have anything unique about that number. We're just one away from 135. Another half decade of episodes. Feeling time. What are you going to do? Catch you next week. Peace.